I'm Simone, 32 years old, and I just moved to Harmony Creek, a quaint little town nestled in the heart of the Midwest. I'd always envisioned a quieter life away from the city's hustle, a place where community spirit thrived. The tree-lined streets and friendly waves from neighbors initially seemed to confirm my idyllic vision. My new house, a charming two-story with a wraparound porch, felt like a fresh start, a canvas for the life I wanted to build. I was eager to become a part of this close-knit community, to contribute and find my place. Little did I know, the quiet charm of Harmony Creek held a silent, simmering undercurrent that would soon challenge everything I believed. The first few weeks were a blur of unpacking and settling in, punctuated by polite but somewhat distant interactions. I noticed the occasional lingering glance, a pause in conversations when I walked by, but I dismissed it as natural curiosity towards a newcomer. After all, I was one of the very few black families in a predominantly white town. I wanted to believe that people were genuinely welcoming, that my race wouldn't be a barrier here. My parents had always taught me to approach new situations with an open heart, to assume the best in people. This philosophy had served me well in life, fostering optimism even in challenging times. A flyer arrived in my mailbox, neatly folded, announcing the quarterly neighborhood watch meeting. It felt like an invitation, a formal welcome into the community's inner circle. This was my chance, I thought, to truly integrate, to show them I was here to be a responsible and engaged resident. The meeting was scheduled for Tuesday evening at the old community hall, a building that seemed to hold generations of town history within its weathered walls. I marked it on my calendar with a sense of anticipation, preparing to introduce myself and offer my skills. I had a background in community organizing, and I felt I could genuinely contribute. I spent the day before the meeting thinking about what I might say, how I could best present myself. I wanted to convey my sincerity and my desire to be a good neighbor, someone they could rely on. I even baked a batch of my famous chocolate chip cookies, hoping to break the ice. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my lawn, a faint knot of unease began to form in my stomach. It was a feeling I couldn't quite place, a subtle premonition that something about this evening might not go as smoothly as I hoped. I pushed it aside, attributing it to simple nerves. I chose a comfortable yet professional outfit, wanting to make a good first impression. My heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and a touch of apprehension as I locked my front door. The scent of warm cookies filled the air, a small comfort against the growing uncertainty. Walking the few blocks to the community hall, I noticed lights on in most houses, suggesting many residents would be attending. This reinforced my hope for a strong, active community. The evening air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves, a perfect backdrop for a new beginning. I arrived a few minutes early, wanting to get a good seat and observe the dynamics. The hall was already buzzing with quiet conversations, a mix of familiar faces, and a few I hadn't seen before. The murmur of voices seemed to quiet slightly as I stepped inside, a subtle shift in the room's energy. A few heads turned in my direction, then quickly looked away. It wasn't overtly hostile, but it was noticeable, like a ripple in still water. I offered a warm smile to a woman arranging papers at a table near the entrance, but her response was a brief, almost forced nod. I found an empty chair near the back, placing my plate of cookies on a small table beside me. The aroma wafted through the air, but no one seemed to acknowledge it or me. People continued their conversations, their backs often turned in my direction, creating an invisible barrier. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that it takes time to break into an established community. Perhaps they were just shy, or perhaps they were simply engrossed in their discussions. I tried to maintain my optimistic outlook, despite the growing chill in the room. The meeting officially began with a stern-looking man, Mr. Henderson, tapping a gavel. He was clearly the leader, his voice booming as he welcomed everyone. His eyes swept over the room, pausing for a fraction of a second when they met mine, then moving on quickly. The initial agenda covered routine matters, street repairs, upcoming town events, and a brief discussion about local wildlife. The conversations were polite, if a little stiff, and I listened attentively, trying to grasp the rhythm of their discussions. I noticed a few side glances in my direction, but nothing direct. As the meeting progressed, the topics shifted towards neighborhood safety and security, the core purpose of the watch. People began, sharing concerns about petty vandalism and unfamiliar cars. It felt like a natural progression, and I felt ready to contribute my thoughts. When Mr. Henderson opened the floor for suggestions, I raised my hand, eager to share some ideas from my previous experience. My hand remained in the air for what felt like an eternity, but he seemed to deliberately avoid my gaze, calling on others instead. It was subtle, but unmistakably intentional. I lowered my hand, a flicker of disappointment crossing my face, but I tried again a few minutes later. This time, he looked directly at me, then quickly diverted his eyes to someone else, granting them permission to speak. A wave of heat rushed through me, a mix of embarrassment and growing frustration. The discussions continued, and I noticed a pattern. Whenever a topic arose that might allow for a new perspective, especially one that I might offer, the conversation would quickly shift or be shut down. It was as if my presence, or my potential contribution, was actively being avoided. I tried to catch the eye of a woman sitting across from me, hoping for a shared moment of understanding, but she quickly looked down at her notes. The air in the room felt thick with unspoken tension, a palpable barrier between me and everyone else. My cookies remained untouched. A woman near the front, Mrs. Albright, started talking about maintaining the character of Harmony Creek, her gaze sweeping over the room, lingering for a moment on me. Her words were vague, but the implication felt clear, a coded message about who belonged and who didn't. Another man chimed in. We need to be vigilant about who comes into our community, ensure they share our values. His words hung in the air, heavy and pointed, and several people nodded in agreement, their eyes briefly flicking towards me. The smiles I had seen earlier had vanished. I felt a tightening in my chest, a familiar ache of being an outsider, but intensified by the collective silence. It wasn't just individual rudeness. It was a group dynamic, a deliberate act of exclusion. My initial optimism began to crumble under the weight of their unspoken judgment. The meeting continued, but I no longer heard the words. My mind was consumed by the realization that I was not just a newcomer, I was an anomaly, a perceived threat to their established order. The warmth of the cookies I had brought felt like a cruel irony, a gesture of goodwill unreciprocated. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with unspoken prejudice. Every averted gaze, every whispered comment, every deliberate oversight chipped away at my resolve. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, to escape the suffocating weight of their collective disapproval. A particularly jarring comment cut through my thoughts. We need to ensure our children are safe from outside influences, a man declared, his voice laced with an unsettling undertone. Several heads nodded vigorously, and for a split second, I felt a wave of fear, a primal instinct to protect myself. It was then that something shifted within me. The fear gave way to a surge of indignation, a burning anger at the injustice. I had come here with an open heart, ready to contribute, and I was being met with suspicion and thinly veiled hostility simply because of the color of my skin. I thought of my ancestors, of the struggles they endured, of the battles they fought for dignity and respect. Their courage echoed within me, a silent roar against the quiet prejudice in this room. I refused to let their narrow-mindedness diminish my worth or silence my voice. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel unwelcome, unworthy, or unsafe because of who they were. I felt a profound sense of responsibility to stand up, not just for myself, but for the principle of equality. My hands clenched under the table, a silent commitment forming in my mind. I wouldn't let them define me or this moment. I would not be a victim of their prejudice. The time for quiet observation was over. It was time to turn the tables. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, steadying my racing heart. The room was still focused on Mr. Henderson, discussing some trivial point about lawn maintenance. This was my moment, the precise instant to make my presence undeniably felt. My voice, clear and firm, cut through the low hum of conversation. "Excuse me, Mr. Henderson," I stated, my tone calm but unwavering. Every head in the room snapped towards me, a collective gasp rippling through the attendees. The sudden silence was deafening. Mr. Henderson's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of annoyance and surprise crossing his face. He seemed momentarily stunned that someone had dared to interrupt his carefully controlled meeting. "Yes, miss," he stammered, clearly forgetting or pretending not to know my name. Simone Davis, I supplied, my gaze meeting his directly, holding it. I've been listening intently to the concerns raised tonight, particularly regarding community safety and integration. And I have some insights I believe are highly relevant to our discussion. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging nervous glances. The tension in the room intensified, a palpable energy of resistance and curiosity. They were clearly unprepared for this direct challenge to their unspoken rules. I understand the desire to protect Harmony Creek's unique character. I continued, my voice gaining strength. However, true community safety comes not from exclusion, but from comprehensive strategies and diverse perspectives. And I happen to have extensive experience in just that. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. Ms. Davis, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we're currently discussing. I didn't let him finish. I knew this was my only chance to make them listen, to shatter their comfortable bubble of prejudice. Actually, Mr. Henderson, I interjected, pulling a sleek tablet from my bag, I believe my presence here tonight is far more relevant than you realize. My insights aren't just enthusiasm, they are the result of years of professional work. The room was absolutely silent now. I tapped the screen, projecting a professional logo onto the wall behind me. Community Resilience Initiative. A murmur went through the room, a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Mr. Henderson's face, usually so composed, began to pale. My name is Simone Davis, I reiterated, my voice resonating with authority, and I am the lead consultant for the state's new Safe Communities Grant program. Harmony Creek was identified as a potential recipient, contingent on a thorough assessment of its community engagement and safety protocols. The room erupted in whispers, a flurry of shocked gasps and hurried conversations. The faces that had previously held disdain now contorted with disbelief and dawning horror. Mrs. Albright looked as if she might faint, her hand flying to her mouth. My attendance at this neighborhood watch meeting, I continued, my gaze sweeping over their stunned faces, was part of that initial assessment. I came here to observe, to listen, and to understand the true spirit of Harmony Creek's community efforts. Mr. Henderson stammered, but we weren't informed. We didn't know. His voice was a pathetic squeak compared to his earlier booming tone. The tables had truly turned, and he, along with everyone else, was caught completely off guard. Indeed, I said, a faint, knowing smile touching my lips. The program mandates an unannounced, organic assessment to ensure genuine community dynamics are observed. And what I've observed tonight, unfortunately, will be a significant part of my report. The silence that followed was thick with shame and regret. The very people who had ostracized me now looked utterly defeated, their carefully constructed facade of community spirit shattered. Their faces were a canvas of shock, embarrassment, and a desperate scramble for damage control. Mr. Henderson, visibly shaken, fumbled for words, his usual composure completely gone. Ms. Davis, please, we can explain. There must be some misunderstanding. He looked around at the other attendees, who avoided his gaze, equally mortified. I allowed a moment for the full weight of the revelation to sink in, for them to truly grasp the implications of their behavior. The power dynamics had shifted entirely. They were no longer the gatekeepers, but the ones being judged. There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Henderson, I stated calmly, closing my tablet. My report will reflect exactly what transpired here tonight. However, the program also emphasizes the potential for growth and change within communities. A glimmer of desperate hope flickered in their eyes. What does that mean? Mrs. Albright whispered, her voice barely audible. The arrogance and dismissiveness had been replaced by a palpable sense of anxiety and a desperate plea for redemption. It means, I explained, that Harmony Creek still has an opportunity to demonstrate its true commitment to inclusivity and community safety. But it will require a genuine, demonstrable shift in approach, starting with how you engage with all residents. The meeting ended abruptly, not with Mr. Henderson's gavel, but with a palpable sense of disarray. People began to leave, some avoiding my gaze, others offering tentative, apologetic nods. The cookies I had brought were finally noticed, but no one dared to take one. Walking out of that community hall, I felt a profound sense of liberation. The weight of their prejudice, which had pressed down on me for weeks, had been lifted, replaced by an invigorating sense of empowerment. My courage had indeed turned the tables. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in Harmony Creek slowly began to change. I noticed more genuine smiles, more direct eye contact, and even a few hesitant apologies. Mr. Henderson himself approached me, offering a formal apology and an invitation to lead a new, truly inclusive community safety committee. The town, realizing the stakes, began to make concerted efforts towards diversity and inclusion. The Safe Communities Grant Program eventually came through, bringing much-needed resources, but it was contingent on ongoing reports from me, ensuring genuine change. My experience in Harmony Creek taught me that courage isn't just about fighting back, but about strategically revealing truth. It's about understanding that sometimes the most powerful weapon against prejudice is the unexpected truth, delivered at the right moment. My home in Harmony Creek now feels truly like home, not just a house. The community is still learning, still growing, but the silent undercurrent of prejudice has been exposed, and the path towards genuine inclusivity has begun. It was a difficult journey, but one that ultimately proved my worth and resilience.